Right now, a pair of baseball cleats is sitting in an auction that closes this week. And by the time it does, it is going to sell for more money than any shoe a baseball player has worn ever. It's well past $147,000 already, and it's still climbing. Not a Jordan, not a basketball sneaker, a pair of baseball cleats. And almost nobody in the sneaker world is really paying attention to it. And I think I can tell you why. Because I watched this exact same thing happen 30 years ago, and I've felt like the only person talking about it ever since. So let me take you back. August 5th, 1995, one day after my birthday. My dad, my grandparents, and I drove from Sacramento to San Francisco for a Giants game at Candlestick Park. Somewhere along the way, somebody realized that the tickets were still sitting on the dining room table back at my grandparents' house. My dad didn't say much. He grabbed the keys, drove all the way back to Sacramento by himself to get them, and then drove back again to San Francisco while the rest of us waited. We finally got to our seats around the third or fourth inning. And you know, any story about my dad that happens to take place at a baseball stadium is usually one of those ones worth keeping and retelling. And the part that I still remember most, the place was electric, almost deafening, except the crowd wasn't roaring for the Giants like I would have hoped. They were roaring for a rookie on the other team, a pitcher from Japan named Hideo Nomo, in the middle of throwing a one-hitter. Dodgers 3, Giants nothing. I was 15 years old at the time, and I didn't have the language for what I was watching. A guy crossed an ocean and made a whole stadium forget which team they came to see. Something got planted at Candlestick that day in my mind. And one more thing that I couldn't stop staring at during that game, the Giants shortstop, Royce Clayton. He was wearing a pair of Nike Air Diamond Furies. I've been chasing that shoe ever since. Hold that thought though, because we'll come back to it. I'm Nick, I run Sneaker History, and I'm building all of this independently now after working for a couple of decades in the sneaker industry. And sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who actually cares about baseball sneakers. Baseball and sneakers. I've been writing about them and talking about them for years, going back to Soul Collector, the East Bay blog, even my time at Complex. Half the time it still feels like I'm standing in an empty room when I get excited about baseball sneakers. But that feeling at Candlestick, a whole stadium roaring for the wrong team because of what somebody did on the field, that's one of the most overlooked opportunities in all of sneakers. And let me show you why. If you want my honest bet where this business has the most room left to grow, it's not basketball. Basketball is saturated, it's picked clean, and it's a bidding war over the same silhouettes. I think it's baseball. And I know that I'm a little biased because I am a baseball fan. And I know how that sounds, but let me try to back it up a little bit because I can already hear some of you, Nick, baseball's had sneakers. And you're right, of course it has. That's not exactly what I'm talking about, though. Ken Griffey Jr. had the Air Max line, one of the best shoes Nike has ever made, in my opinion. Frank Thomas had the Reebok Big Hurt line. Barry Bonds had a Fila line, and that was one of my personal favorites. I'll defend those to anybody. Mike Trout has his own Nike cleats, Francisco Lindor has a New Balance signature, and there have been plenty of player-exclusive Jordans on the baseball diamond, honestly more than most of us could even name. So yes, the shoes do exist, but to me, every one of those is an example of the missing connection, not proof against it. It feels like they were moments and not a movement like we've seen in other aspects of sneakers. A great shoe here, a signature run there, and then the sneaker world went right back to the hardwood and kind of forgot about baseball again. Granted, baseball in itself, or Major League Baseball, hasn't done a whole lot to help along the way either. But none of it ever was built into a lasting pipeline the way that basketball sneakers were built. And to me, that's something we should look closer at, because baseball is absolutely full of sneakerheads right now. Go to any level of game in the big leagues, the minors, travel ball, a beer league on a Tuesday night, and look what's on their feet before and after they lace up the cleats. The culture is already there. The players are already deep in it. The bridge between the sport and the sneaker world just never really got built. Nomo, being aligned with that Griffey era, felt like it was the first time somebody was trying to build it. Think about 1995, Atmos, Meta, Air Maxes. You get where I'm going with this. Let me be precise here because I do think that it matters. Nomo was not the first Japanese player in the big leagues. That was Masanori Murakami, and he debuted for those same San Francisco Giants in 1964. My grandparents actually saw him play back in the day. But after Murakami, the door basically stayed shut for about 30 years. Nomo is the one who kicked it back open in 1995 and made sure it stayed open. Nomomania swept the whole country, and a big part of it was the theater of this guy. He had this windup nobody had ever seen, the tornado. He'd turn his back almost all the way to the hitter, pause, and bring his hands over his head, coil up like a corkscrew, and then unwind. As a pitcher, it just fascinated me. I read that he used to tape a tennis ball between his fingers at night just to train his grip before his forkball. That's commitment. The man was must-see TV, and I was one of the millions who couldn't look away. You already know I was one of them because I was in the seats. And the numbers back up the show. He led the entire National League in strikeouts, a 2.54 ERA, National League Rookie of the Year. He started the All-Star game as a rookie from Japan. Now, why does a sneaker guy care about a pitcher? Because in 1996, Nike gave him a signature shoe. It came out right alongside King Griffey Jr.'s Air Griffey Max 1, and it shared some of the same DNA. Think about what a signature shoe actually means. It means the culture has decided that you are not a novelty. It said the same thing out loud in 1996 that the sport had spent 30 years not saying. A Japanese star belonged. It was a short line, one retro back in 2011. It lives now as a quiet favorite amongst a lot of the sneakerheads who were paying attention back then. But that shoe was the first flashing sign that baseball, and Japanese baseball specifically, has a sneaker story. And I kind of already knew it in my gut because I had felt the whole stadium prove it at Candlestick. This is what makes Ohtani feel inevitable instead of lucky. Every Japanese player who came over made the next one less of a risk. Nomo made Ichiro thinkable. Ichiro made Hideki Matsui, Daisuke Matsuzaka ordinary, then Darvish, Tanaka, Maeda, Uehara, Seiyu, Suzuki, the list goes on. 30 years of players quietly proving they belonged, until belonging wasn't even the question anymore. That whole staircase is what Ohtani walked up. He didn't appear out of nowhere. He's standing on top of 30 years. And where Nomo was theater, Ohtani is kind of the opposite. Quiet, almost businesslike on the mound. He's the better pitcher of the two by a long distance, in my opinion. Maybe not as entertaining on the mound, but definitely a better pitcher. And then he goes out and nearly hits everyone in the league on top of that. A guy who pitches like an ace and hits like a superstar in the same body, which basically hasn't existed ever, but some may say Babe Ruth was that. Ohtani's not the promising rookie anymore. He's the best player in the world. And in 2024, New Balance gave him his signature shoe, the Ohtani 1, with details pulled straight from Japanese ballpark architecture. Not marketed as a novelty, marketed as the gold standard. Then in March of 2025, he went home. Major League Baseball opened the season in Japan at the Tokyo Dome. The Dodgers against the Cubs. Ohtani's first big league games ever in his home country. And the scale of it is hard to even process. More than 25 million people in Japan watched the opener. That's the most watched Major League Baseball broadcast in the country's history. Ohtani even admitted afterward that he hadn't felt that nervous on a baseball field in years. Then he homered in the next game, and he launched one against the Yomiuri Giants in the exhibition too, just to remind everyone who he was. It all happened at the Tokyo Dome. Opened in 1988, they call it the Big Egg. Around 45,000 seats, Japan's first dome stadium, home of the Yomiuri Giants, who are basically one of the most popular teams in Japan. If you ever get the chance to see a game at the Tokyo Dome, specifically the Yomiuri Giants, I highly suggest it. It's the best baseball I've seen in person in my entire life, and I've seen a ton of baseball. As for the series, every game sold out. Over 500,000 items sold at the stadium store. The fan festival around the series drew more than 450,000 people over 12 days. The number one seller was obviously the Ohtani jersey. This is not a sport waiting for it to matter. It already does. Which brings us all the way back to the cleats that I opened with. The ones that he wore at the Tokyo Dome opener, his Ohtani 1 player exclusives. And they are special for a whole stack of reasons that land all at once. One shoe is signed his full kanji signature, which he almost never does. The other he wrote Opening Day Tokyo Series by hand. The heels have embroidered portraits of his dog Decoy. And the part I love, the spikes still have the actual Tokyo Dome dirt on them. His first big league game on Japanese soil in a game that sits right between his 2 World Series titles. Every layer of meaning you could want is stacked into this one pair of shoes. They're up for auction right now at a house called The Realist, and it closes this week. When I first wrote about this in the sneaker newsletter, it had cleared about $44,000, with 3 weeks still left on the clock. And I said at that time that I thought it would probably go a lot higher. As I'm recording, it has blown past $147,000 with just a handful of days left on the clock, but it's still climbing. And the people who actually do this for a living think it will become the most valuable footwear any baseball player has ever worn. Think about that. The most valuable baseball shoes in history might not be a spike from Babe Ruth or Jackie Robinson. It might be a pair of 2025 New Balances, worn by a Japanese player in Tokyo, signed in kanji, with his dog on them, and some Tokyo Dome dirt still in the cleats. And a number like that should light a fire under New Balance. Ohtani does have shoes you can actually buy here in the States, but the collection is tiny, and it's basically all cleats and turf trainers. Stuff that most people are not going to wear out to go grab a cup of coffee. And I'll be straight about my own bias. I am a lifelong Giants fan, runs in the family for decades, for generations, and I rarely leave the house in Dodger blue, as you can see from today's fit. But Ohtani is bigger than baseball right now, bigger than any one team's colors, and there should be a pair of his that even a Giants fan would actually want to wear. A game-worn cleat pushing past $147,000 is the market saying the demand is there. About as loud as it gets, in my opinion. To me, that's a huge wave of opportunity sitting right in the open, and I hope New Balance paddles out and rides it. More colorways, something wearable off the field, more Ohtani on the shelves here, period. So this is where I land and why I made this whole video. Basketball learned decades ago that the shoe is a story you can hold in your own hands. Baseball is sitting on a storage locker full of those stories, and almost nobody has come asking for them. Guys like Mario Restores are making more players' custom cleats right now than at any point in the sport's history. One-of-a-kind pairs with personal stories stitched right into them every single week. And the sneaker community has mostly not caught up to this yet. That gap, to me, is the entire opportunity that I'm talking about today. And I want you to know this is not a take that I just recently picked up. I have been trying to build this exact bridge for like 15 years. Back around 2009 and 2010, when I built the East Bay blog at Soul, I was using it to write about kids like Steven Strasburg and Bryce Harper the year they actually went #1 overall in the draft. I was trying to connect the next generation of players to the sneaker community before anybody else was really consistently thinking about baseball that way. And that kid named Bryce Harper, he just dropped his 11th signature cleat last month with Under Armour. It was a whole Philadelphia theme unveiled at the All-Star game. It feels like the connection I was reaching for back then is finally actually here, or at least it should be. It just took the rest of the world a little while to catch up. The Dodgers did a Converse and undefeated Chuck 70 collab tied to Yoshinobu Yamamoto. MLB.com actually hit me up to explain what the shoe meant, and Brian Horowitz wrote that piece. They quoted me in it. You should definitely go check it out. But the people who really cover this, Peter Very when he was over at Footwear News, the team at MLB.com, it's a small circle. And I've been in it for a really long time. And when the league starts calling sneaker people to explain its own shoes, the category feels like it's waking up a little bit. Every big baseball moment is a branding opportunity sitting in plain sight. And baseball has more of those moments with less competition for them than anywhere else in sneakers right now. But if I'm being real with you, it was never really about the shoes. It was about a kid in the third base seats at Candlestick realizing a person could cross an ocean and make a stadium roar for the wrong team. 30 years later, I'm scrolling through photos of Ohtani's cleats, and I'm 15 years old again, split finger grip and all. And yeah, I haven't tracked down those Royce Clayton Air Diamond Furies. Some bucket list items are meant to stay on the list for a while, I think. The whole point is this. You show up however late, you hold on to what you can, and you make sure the moment gets written down somewhere where it can't be erased. Nomo's shoe did that in 1996. Ohtani's cleats are doing it right now. The overlooked market was never small. We just weren't looking. I wrote the longer version of this over on thesneakernewsletter.com, and it's a free one. If you want to check it out, it is linked below. If you want more stories like this told, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.